The Backrooms holds many secrets. That probably goes without saying at this point. But like a Russian doll, oftentimes, the Backrooms can offer secrets compounded within secrets, some hiding things that you might prefer not to find. It's with this unsettling fact in mind that we once again join Trish in Level 4. Trish was an American soldier stationed in Afghanistan several years ago, when she and her squad were accidentally no-clipped into the Backrooms. Sadly, since then, Trish is the only survivor, as the Backrooms enacted a horrible war of attrition against their health, sanity, and lives. Needless to say, Trish had already been through the ringer at this point, but in the grand scheme of things, the malicious forces of the Backrooms were still only just getting started. She'd already faced several horrors in the enigmatic levels of the Backrooms, from the sadistic and unstoppable Barnaby Bun of Barnaby Bun's Fun Emporium to the rotting ambulatory corpses lurking in the terrifying basement level. In some regards, Trish was relieved to be back on Level 4, which is generally rather safe, as long as you stay away from the windows. But Trish, still a soldier at heart, despite the loss of her guns, didn't want to settle for surviving. She wanted to get out and live. But after being repeatedly betrayed by doors, windows, elevators, and even breaking through the floorboards, she knew that she needed to try another method of escape. Lucky for Trish, her all-time favorite movie was Die Hard, so she decided to channel John McClane to get out of this jam. She'd find a way to get out through the air vents. After all, the ducts here looked big enough for even someone with her broad physique to comfortably crawl through. With her one remaining weapon, a combat knife she kept strapped to her belt, she could unlock a new potential escape route. Seeing as Level 4, the abandoned office, had an abundance of disused office furniture, it was easy for Trish to grab a nearby desk and push it beneath a vent on the upper half of a wall. Standing up on the desk, she was able to use her knife as a makeshift screwdriver, slowly removing the rivets holding the grate in place, until she was able to remove it without causing any lasting damage. She'd learned that whenever possible, one should be quiet and discreet in here. She hoisted herself up into the vent, being careful not to move too abruptly, and began to crawl through. She tried not to enter a coughing fit as the air swam with ancient dust. These things were never as clean and stainless as they were in the movies, were they? Either way, she'd press on, until she found the way into something different. And thankfully for her, well, depending on your point of view, she soon found what she was looking for. All it took was unscrewing another grate in the vent and dropping down below. Welcome to the latest enigmatic level, the insulation. Specifically Area 1A. Yes, it's that kind of level. We suggest just rolling with it. As you may have noticed, this level is called the insulation because it's largely comprised of fluffy pink fiberglass attic insulation, the kind that's both good for the environment and will save you a lot of money on your monthly heating bill. Seriously, if your home or apartment isn't properly insulated, you're just throwing your money away. That aside, Trish momentarily entertained the idea that she might now be trapped in a strange world made of cotton candy, because in the Backrooms, who knows really? But she soon came to the more logical conclusion of attic insulation and began to explore. Area 1A was relatively well lit, all things considered, making it at least as hospitable as Level 4. And thanks to all that wonderful money-saving attic insulation, it was also comfortably warm and cozy, which is always a plus. The one downside so far was this strange new insulated realm was relatively cramped, forcing Trish to hug the walls on multiple occasions, just to squeeze through. Even so, despite the endless fluffy insulation and aged wooden scaffolding holding it all together, the air didn't feel as stale as it probably should for such an old, cramped place. Nothing ever seemed to make sense here, but hey, she was getting used to it. The more she walked, the more elaborate and expansive the twisting halls of wood and insulation seemed to become. She began to wonder where she actually was in relation to the wider world. Was this some kind of impossible alien megastructure, an underground base, or had she really been transported into another alien dimension entirely, where everything exists on a spectrum between utterly bizarre and incredibly hostile? Was any of this even real, or just a delusion cooked up by a fractured mind? Trish concluded it probably wasn't all that constructive to dwell on these kinds of thoughts. She was best off assessing her immediate situation as well as she could, and making active situational decisions on a case-by-case basis. Otherwise, she was probably dooming herself to a stress-induced nervous breakdown and slipping into a catatonic state in a new world full of dangerous monsters. Definitely wasn't a productive idea. But soon enough, this oddly chill section of the installation would come to an end, and when it did, Trish would probably regret not enjoying it more while it lasted. With no clear point of delineation, Trish suddenly found herself wandering into an area that appeared darker, more industrial. The pink attic insulation still abounded, but it was punctuated by wires and pipes running through the walls and out of the ground, lending to its overall more threatening vibe. While still a part of the overall insulation level, this particular zone is known as Area 1B. And if you're here, one thing can be sure: worse things are to come. But of course, Trish had no reason to know about that just yet, did she? She was still blissfully unaware of the entity she'd be meeting very, very soon. Instead, she just kept walking as her eyes adjusted to the darkness of the new area. Sometimes, the pipes hissed and rattled, the wires sparked. It was really a miracle that this whole place had never caught fire before. But knowing her luck, Trish fully expected that today would probably be the day. Was there anything of value down here? Besides the immense value for money you'll be getting if you install good quality insulation in your attic? Or was it really all weird pink fluff, all the way down? Luckily, Trish noticed a source of light in the distance. Tentatively, she approached, hoping this might at least be something useful. You could only imagine how intrigued Trish was when she saw that the source of the light was a hole cut into the ceiling above her. A hole that, with one good jump, she could get a decent grip on and pull herself through. So naturally, hoping to get something out of this whole venture, that's exactly what she did. We here at Backrooms Explained invite you to take a wild guess on whether Trish would come to regret this decision in the near future. When Trish emerged into the ominous, poorly lit zone known as the crawl space, she immediately felt something change. It was as though the very vibrations of the air had altered in some subtle manner. This was no longer the strange comfort of the endless spools of attic insulation. This was the same feeling a person might get in a video game when they see the message, "You cannot fast travel when enemies are nearby." But in the back rooms, it's simply a given that at any moment, real-life enemies may be nearby. So Trish simply quietly slid her combat knife out of her belt and kept walking. Something that quickly struck Trish as she ventured deeper into the crawl space was the fact that the ceiling was slightly lower here and held up by a number of brick pillars stretching off into the darkened distance. She needed to crouch a little just to move comfortably here, which only made the feeling of being on edge even worse. She kept a white-knuckle grip on her combat knife, which helped to alleviate the growing feelings of dread that seemed to be slowly consuming her. Maybe, she thought to herself, she should have just stayed in the office. There was a quiet rustling somewhere in the crawl space around her. Trish, ever alert, stifled a gasp and started looking around for the source of the noise. The standard line of thinking may be to calm yourself with platitudes like, "Maybe it's nothing." But Trish's training had taught her that plenty of people had died terrible, preventable deaths, with the thought, "Maybe it's nothing," still floating around their mind. It's always something. You just don't know what it is just yet. Trish kept moving extremely slowly, making sure that every footstep was as quiet as possible. She kept looking around, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the brickwork pillars. Did she just see something move in the dark? Or is her mind just playing tricks on her? When you're worried, it's hard to separate actual evidence you're receiving from the outside and the products of your own paranoid mind. Though when you suddenly hear the spindly limbs of a highly aggressive entity galloping up behind you, it's usually a pretty good indication that you really are in trouble right now. Our heroine turned around just in time to see a monster advancing on her. This is Entity 53, more colloquially known as the crawl space creature. It's a long, spindly, vaguely humanoid entity that largely moves around on all fours, with shorter hind legs and long, mantis-like clawed forelimbs that allow it to move at shocking speeds. It also has a frightening swordfish-like head with sharp teeth and a long, pointed nose, allowing its highly attuned sense of smell to compensate for its poor eyesight. But right now, Trish was less concerned about the monster's physiology and more concerned about how not to be brutally slaughtered by it. Trish raised her arms as the beast bounded into her, protecting her body and taking 2 superficial wounds to her forearms. The creature's sudden weight knocked Trish to the floor as it kept snarling, biting, and slashing at her, while Trish kicked back aggressively with her boots. But the monster just kept coming. It was fast, frightening, and had seemingly boundless energy. And to make matters worse, the initial attack had knocked the combat knife from Trish's hands, leaving her a sitting duck in the face of the creature. She could turn this situation around, but she'd need to be very quick and extremely lucky. Without both, she was as good as dead. There was no doubt about that. As the crawl-space creature lunged for her again, Trish put all her remaining energy into kicking at its head. Luckily, the sudden strike stunned the beast, exactly as planned. It wouldn't last for long, but it'd last just long enough for Trish to do exactly what she'd wanted to. She reached out, grabbed her combat knife, and stabbed it into the creature. It let out the most horrific screeching noise and began leaking thick green blood as it made a hasty retreat back into the darkness. Trish didn't know how long that'd keep the beast at bay, so she wasn't going to waste a second. She sprung to her feet and got out of there like her life depended on it, because in this case, it absolutely did. She ran back to the hole she'd climbed in through and jumped back down into the darkness of Area 1B. From there, she ran back into the comforting light and warmth of Area 1A. But she didn't stop. She ran all the way back to the first vent, climbed back through, and commando crawled back into Level 4, where she sat on the outdated carpet, huffing and puffing. It had been a living nightmare, but at least she was still living after all. Trish made one final mental note before practically passing out right there and then. Stay the hell out of the vents. Want to continue your journey into all facets of the endless mystery that is the Backrooms? Check out Level 0, Entering the Backrooms, for more on this seemingly infinite abyss from Backrooms Explained. See you soon, friends.